My name's Allison Klein, and I'm a staff writer for Education Week and the co-author of our Politics K-12 blog. I have with me on stage Mary Ronan, Cincinnati's superintendent, who's been able to accomplish something truly extraordinary when it comes to what might be the toughest challenge in education policy today, turning around low-performing schools. When Ms. Ronan first came in as acting superintendent back in 2008, she and her team signaled out 16 schools for special intervention. Many of them had seen stagnant student achievement for over a decade. And as you've heard, 4 years later, none of those schools are on the lowest rung of the state's accountability system. None of them are an academic emergency. In fact, a dozen of the schools have reached at least continuous improvement, and others have gone on to be rated effective or even excellent. So that's really pretty amazing. And I'll start with an easy question. What's your secret? By which I mean, what are the key components of your turnaround plan?
Well, I would say we had lots of focus, but we made lots of mistakes on the way. I was a lot younger then, first year superintendent, had a new team, took a look at our test scores, realized in our setup, our elementary schools are from preschool through 8th grade. So when we looked, there were schools that had not met their federal or state targets in a decade. So a child could be in the school for 10 years, never made targets. And we really said, this is unacceptable. Yeah. So then we knew we couldn't target all of our schools because we had, 50 elementary schools. And we knew we wouldn't be successful there. Yeah. So we took the bottom rung, the schools, the 16 schools who were in academic emergency in the state of Ohio. So I actually did go out with the union president to talk to these schools, and it was, and then that's really how we determined how we were going to move forward. But this is another mistake learned. As we were doing all of this, talking about the schools, how we're going to come out and audit, and we wanted them to know we're going to come in, we're going to look at the role of the principal, we're going to look at your teacher licensure, we're going to look at the value-added data at your various grade levels, we're going to look at your student absenteeism, your teacher absenteeism, your teacher mobility and student mobility. We're going to look at what you're doing with your students with disabilities. Are they all included? Ooh. Look at your after-school programming, look at what kind of community involvement you had. So it was going to be a rigorous assessment. So while this is all rolling out, and I didn't pay any attention to this, there was a union election and there was a new union president. So I still just keep on trotting down the road doing what I had planned. So when this rolled out, we determined that there were 4 schools. Oh, and after the audit, we met with the staff and there was a report out. We listed, here's the strengths in your buildings and here's where we think you could use improvement. And we also discovered there were 4 buildings that we felt, that was the previous union president and I, that just had a culture of failure. They had been failing for so long, we just didn't think they had the will to improve. So we said we were going to, whatever the word is these days, reconstitute, redesign, basically surplus out all of the staff, teachers, the custodians, the lunchroom lady, everyone. Now they had jobs, we did not fire individuals, they had to apply for other positions in the district and they all got jobs. And I know we did get some pushback. For instance, the lunchroom lady and the secretary said, whoa, we have nothing to do with academic achievement, why should we go? But you notice the secretary, who's the first person when you come in the door, when they aren't parent friendly, that sets a tone. Your inflexible lunchroom lady who won't serve breakfast to children because they're late, all those things certainly add into the climate. So we just reset the whole building and had great plans. Let's start 2 weeks early, and we're going to add an extra 5th quarter at the end of the school year. But like I said, I didn't notice the change in union leadership. So that first year, I got hit with an unfair labor practice because I had unilaterally, I think, changed the school calendar, even though I was paying the teachers for 2 extra weeks of work. But those are the kinds of pitfalls that you can fall into because you're so focused on doing the work, you're not noticing other things are happening over here that impact you. So I'm older and wiser now. So, and have a good relationship with the current union president, but I learned through my mistakes. So that's how we got started. And actually, there was pushback. The board, when the complaints start coming in, sometimes your bosses kind of get nervous. And finally, I had to say, can we please just finish out the year? A school year's only 9 months, and I promise if this isn't working out after 9 months, we will stop. Well, the good news is, at the end of the school year, 6 of the schools made adequate yearly progress, and that truly was the turning point.
Yeah. So you mentioned that 6 schools made adequate yearly progress after
Yes.
that first year. How long did it take to see results in the other schools? And you mentioned all of the disruption. What did you do to continue just to build support, as we've been hearing about all day-to-day building
Well,
support?
it was amazing. I think people really do want to be successful. So once the schools saw those 6 schools, they said, well, I'm right down the street. I have the same children. I think we too can do it. So that just changed the whole climate. And like I said, success breeds success. And that made a world of difference. But it was a ton of work. You know, we asked for we got very prescriptive. And you know, teachers can bristle at that, and I do understand. We did 90 minutes of reading and 90 minutes of math. And we had noticed there was just a lot of that teaching to the middle, not a lot of differentiated instruction. So we said to our teachers, we want to see centers, a center for remediation when the child doesn't understand it, a center for enrichment. But when you're asking teachers to do that weekly in reading and math, that is a tremendous amount of work, and quite honestly, we still struggle with that, with teachers having the time to do that. We focused on data. We asked them to have individual success plans. You have to be careful because that got associated with IEPs, and the teacher said, wait a minute, we can't do IEPs for all of our children. We said, no, nothing that, that complex, and we tried to make a quick and easy form. But here's where the youngster's strengths and weaknesses are, so you know where to focus. Then we had coaches meeting during the teacher's planning time weekly to go over the data. Then, we had to have a stake in the game. So at central office, we developed, I have smart IT people who developed a dashboard, just like the dashboard of a car, where you could look and see, you could track the child's attendance, their test scores. Now we actually have expanded to the after-school partners. Who's working with the child? Are they getting tutoring? So you could have a whole picture of the child and what they have needed, what they need.
In researching your turnaround, one of the most interesting things to me is that you partnered with the University of Virginia's leadership program to give your principals extra training. Can you talk about some of the cultural changes you saw from that experience and kind of how that partnership has been going?
That's true. In some of the buildings we had new principals, and some of the buildings the principals had been there, but we did notice that they needed a new way of thinking about how they did their work. So the University of Virginia, actually they use innovative practices. They have their business professors and their education professors come together. And in our district, we expect our principals to hire, balance the budget, and those are skills you don't necessarily get in graduate school. So, and they also promised that within 2 years, our schools would make AYP, or at least increase 10%. And you don't get a whole lot of guarantees in education these days. So when we looked at all the programs out there, we thought, this is the one for us.
Yeah.
So we sent our teacher leaders and principals to UVA. And that UVA also visited our buildings to see how things were going. And our business community helped us out also when we asked for an upper manager to be a mentor to help our principals depending on the area they felt was a weakness. Was it the budgeting piece? Was it the interviewing? Was it the coaching piece? So we also paired our principals with a local business person from our industries in town.
You used stimulus money, I know, to help further a lot of your reforms. I think that may have helped pay for Virginia. It helped pay, as you mentioned before, for fifth quarter, which was this sort of special month of academics and enrichment. You really felt like you needed to have
that makes a big difference with
Sure.
youngsters.
Yeah. So now the stimulus funding, as we all know, it's going away. I'm just wondering, how are you going to be able to sustain the work that you've started?
Well, we were just so fortunate that a lot of things were happening. We had stimulus dollars. Also, the GE Aviation's in town, so the GE Aviation has given us dollars. And we were building new schools. We had been part of, Ohio had some of the oldest school buildings in the nation. So while this was happening, schools were being built and students were being moved to swing space. However, as part of this whole community engagement, I was listening to you, Michelle, when you were talking, we went out and asked the individual schools, in addition to, what color carpeting do you want in your building and how do you want it, placed on the lot and what does the playground look like? we asked them, what kind of community services would you like to bring into the building?
Yeah.
This was back in the good times. We had no idea, when we didn't know the money was going to go out and the new normal is a lot less money. So we had invited community partners to come in. So as we built the schools, we built, for instance, office space for mental health professions from, we have Talbot House, Beach Acres, a lot of the social service agencies, and give them offices in our building. Well, they were happy because one of their issues is parents and students don't show up for their appointments. Then, of course, our issue is the children are missing school because they're going to the appointments. So now the counselors are actually in our schools.
Yeah.
So really, we're just paying the utilities on that space, which I'd be paying for anyway. Mm-hmm. Then some local hospitals have approached us about bringing health centers in. So we build out a space with extra sinks and everything and an outdoor entrance, and now they're asking for like awnings outside the door that has their hospital name. But I am fine with that because now you've got a nurse practitioner in your building 5 days a week, a pediatrician several days a week. We just opened a vision center in one of our schools. It looks like, I go to Toma Opticians. It has, the glass cases with the eyeglasses. They have an eye doctor there. So there's a lot of community partners willing to partner, and my skin in the game is the space we build out and the utilities, and they're sending their staff. So thank heavens we started that when we did, because now that the stimulus dollars are gone, we've entered these public-private partnerships. And usually it's like an MOU that you sign with them. Mm-hmm. We'll give them the space. They'll provide services. No money's really changing hands, so your treasurer doesn't get all upset with you that you're spending money. And that really seems to be, actually, I think it's what we're all going to have to do in the future to make the money go farther.
So my normal beat here is Congress, and I hear a lot of debate in Washington over whether school improvement should be accomplished through this intense focus on data and standardized testing, or whether schools should first invest, as you have in Cincinnati, in all these wraparound services, health that you mentioned, vision, things like that. It sounds like in your district you're doing both. You do it all. Do you think they're equally responsible for your results?
I do. We did both. So I have to admit, we did pacing documents for the teachers, and there's pushback there because you're having to move so fast through the curriculum. But then again, if you haven't covered the material, by the time you give the test in the spring, how do you expect the children to be able to pass a test on material they've never seen? We had benchmark assessments along the way, so you could see what you're doing, because we discovered if you get last year's data with this year's students, it doesn't make any sense. So yes, we've done both. We got prescriptive, did benchmarks, pacing documents, but we also did the soft services. And I think at the time, we probably didn't realize that that was the right way to go. Now when I sit back and reflect, I went, oh yes, that was the right thing to do. But as you're doing it, sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing the right thing.
No, that definitely makes sense. You're obviously no newcomer to Cincinnati. You spent your entire career there, starting out as a math and science teacher, working your way up to superintendent. Can you talk a little bit about the role your familiarity with the district played in your success? Do you think somebody could have dropped in from somewhere else and gotten the results that you did?
I think it's helpful if you know the terrain. In fact, I was talking to the superintendent from Colorado last night, because she too is a veteran administrator. You do know to whom to go to ask. You know the business people, you know the power brokers, and you also know how to avoid all those landmines that are out there, because you do know the community. So I think it was helpful, and I could move faster because of that.
Okay. Well, Mary has been nice enough to take questions from the audience. So if anybody out here has a question about Cincinnati and how she's been able to accomplish. All right, I guess I asked all the best questions, but I still have more. There's someone from the live stream. Okay.
So one question we have is, what are some strategies you have to engage parents who are openly hostile and aggressive towards school staff?
It does actually, one of the things I forgot to mention is we have a resource coordinator. We use title dollars in our buildings, because once we figured out we were doing all of these services, you have to have someone to coordinate. So that person is bringing in volunteers, they're bringing in the healthcare counselors, just coordinating with getting the children to visit the health center during the day. So we have a person with those soft skills that has really helped, because sometimes your office staff can be abrasive. and this person is there to kind of smooth those things over. The other thing we discovered too, we had lots of volunteers and help in our schools, but none of it was aligned. Everyone was kind of coming in, doing their own thing. So we have been very, we have tried to align everything. When the volunteers come in, we say, here, we want you to do this in math, or this in reading, or here are our goals. How can you fit in and help us to do this? And not necessarily whatever you were thinking of doing that might pull us off track, because a lot of schools had a lot of help, but they weren't improving, and we think it's because they were pulled in so many directions by people with good intentions, but nothing was aligned.
So you align those school resource officers? to
We've
school
done a lot
goals,
of that, manual for tutors, training for the tutors and volunteers, and having that person on site to coordinate all of this, because there's nothing, you lose volunteers if you don't have someone in the building, meet, greet, coordinate. If your child's absent, schedule them with someone else. There's all of those, you just need someone to do all of that.
I'm just going to do a quick scan. You called your turnaround plan in Cincinnati the elementary initiative. So I know you started with the youngest students, and I'm wondering why you chose to start there, and what are your plans, or what kind of work have you done in your high schools?
Well, I do think the right place to start is at elementary school. And the other thing we did, we moved to all-day preschool in those buildings. We couldn't afford it all across the district, but in those 16 buildings, and I'm just so delighted that the president has taken up preschool, because only half of our children come to kindergarten ready. So preschool is a huge need. Our high schools, depending on the test in your state, our high schools were doing okay. It was our elementary schools where the scores were lagging, so that's why we started with our younger children.
Okay. You and I have talked quite a bit about how the education policy landscape has changed in Ohio and really all over the country. New system of waivers, which obviously has implications for achievement targets for turnaround schools. And I'm wondering how schools in your district and you have been able to deal with this kind of ground shifting beneath your feet.
I think we're all very aware. We had success with the old standards, the old tests, and the old report card. I am keenly aware with the new standards, new tests, new report card, that we are going to have to dig our way back out of the hole to success again. I think the good news is we have a blueprint, and the fact that we've done it once before, I think we know it can be done. Plus, we have just a new group of teachers moving into the profession, and I think they look at teaching and learning a little bit differently using technology. And like I said, we have the blueprint, so we know, well, actually, I hope that we're back here in a couple of years after we have been successful with the Common Core. But we know that that's our next target.
Your next challenge, yeah. Mm-hmm. Obviously, principals are really important to school success. And I know you sort of have kind of a quirky or different process in Cincinnati for choosing principals. You can suggest candidates, but then it's ultimately going to be the decision of a kind of a community board. I'm wondering how you sort of work with those folks to make sure you get the right person into the building.
Our site-based councils interview and recommend our principals. It was part of a commitment to the community on part of the board. If you pass levies to keep the schools going, we want more input. So yes, I try to, you have to be careful you don't send someone out for an interview who you wouldn't want as your principal, because by golly, the site-based council will pick that person. So you do have to be careful when you screen people and send them out. But you know what? I think the community is more invested, and at least the first year or two, since they chose that person, that site-based council of 9 people, suddenly want that person to be successful.
You talked a little bit about the decision to get rid of all of the staff at 4 of your schools. Why only those 4? You did that actually, I think, even before it was required in the school improvement grant program. Why did you feel like that was really important to a culture change? And
we didn't feel we could make progress. I mean, when the union president and I walked out the door, and you're like, oh, that was a depressing place that just kind of sucked the life out of you. And it didn't help that when we were out there presenting, like in one building, they gave us a laptop with a broken screen to put the PowerPoint presentation on. And those little things just speak volumes about the culture in a building. So just everything was like that, just kind of broken and just no desire to fix it. And that's why we chose those 4 schools. The other schools, we felt the staff wanted to do it, but would say, well, show us an exemplar, show us what a great reading center looks like for remediation. They wanted you to help them, and they were open to suggestions.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet you in person. I really,
Thank you.
on a personal note, I just really enjoyed writing about your district.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.